everyone, my name's Aiden Malacaria and today we're looking at how to do a false chord scream. So if you're a fan of Whitechapel or Parkway Drive, then you're pretty much ready to start learning how to false chord scream. That's the technique that they use. I'm going to assume for this video that you have done your own warm-up, and make sure that you do a warm-up or you might find it's quite discomforting and you might find some pain. If you are experiencing pain, just stop, wait for the next day to recover, and then go back to it. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a bit of science behind the vocal cords and the false chord. The false chord is like your second set of vocal cords. When you have your vocal cords hitting, you're doing this singing, sound, whatever, talking, and then above it there's these extra two muscles that look like that, and they slap together to create that false chord sound. Now I've had a camera down my throat when I was getting a nose operation and I got to see this. Asked the nurse if she could let me have a scream and scared the shit out of her. It was great. This false chord muscle, I imagine it as like your vocal distortion pedal. Okay, I use this one to control how much raspiness, as you can call it, or distortion on my voice I want to apply. So to do this one today, we're going to start with an open mouth shape. And it's going to sound pretty bland and crackly. So these screams don't tend to sound too great on their own. You kind of sound like a dying animal when you don't have any effects or any instrumentals, so it's not going to sound that great right now. This is what it sounds like without effects. And this is what it sounds like with effects. And oh, you idiot! And by effects, I mean EQ, compression, reverb, compression, and a limiter. Compression, and that's basically all I use for my vocals. Compression, compression, compression. When I was learning, it sounded pretty crackly and awful for a while. I just got better and better at it and then started applying my own voice to it. So to go for this crackly sound, it's really weird. You kind of have to push. You have to do that weird sound. That's how I started. And you start to try and engage that false chord muscle. You're trying to learn what that feels like. You can feel that horrible sound that's coming through. That's what you want. If you're getting this clunky sound like probably not working so well. Keep trying to put this little crackle on your voice, and that's how I started doing it. We're gonna go further up through that crackle. So now we've got this horrible distorted sound that we're getting out of our voice. That's perfect. That's what we want right now. The next step is to start pushing it a little bit into your voice, and you're going to add that little push. Be sure not to push too hard. You're going to close your voice off and it's not going to work. Another way you can go about it is learning what it feels like by doing a dog barking sound. So you can go and that pretty much gets the muscle going straight away. And as you can feel, starts clamping a lot more, and that's the false chord engaging. If you're getting your voice stuck in there and there's no raspiness, you're not quite getting that false chord engagement, and that's what you want to work on. So that's how I start going into a little bit of a scream, and you kind of wind up into it if you really want. The only trouble with that is when you're starting to pronounce words, you can't wind up into it because you're going to end up with these horrible sounds. Like if I say I in a scream and I wind up into it, I, it doesn't sound very pronounced very well. If you want to get good at the pronunciation, condense your wind up. So instead of going I, you're going to go I! So you get used to pushing straight into the word. And pronunciation is the most important thing when you're screaming because you sound like shit if you can't pronounce your words. So now that we've figured out what it feels like, we're going to start adding it to a hollow sound. And this is going to prepare you for doing a low scream. So you want your mouth nice and wide and you want to try and make it sound really hollow. Doesn't sound the most graceful, but this is what I used to get my low scream. So you want to try and sound really hollow and use your mouth to expand as much as possible. Now that we've got that hollow sound, we're going to convert it into a low scream, and all we have to do is close your mouth. Really simple. That's how I go about my low scream. So my mouth looks like a butthole, and that's basically what you want. The smaller you can get your butthole, the lower your scream's gonna be. Going back to that sound that we did before, you want to push into your low screams. This is gonna give them a lot of power. And they say push through your diaphragm, all that stuff that you see in all the vocal tutorials all over the internet, push through your diaphragm, nice and deep. Yep, do all that shit. Just don't shit yourself while you're doing it. I nearly did that once, it was a bad time. Try and play around with different tongue techniques when you're doing your low screams. Some people press them on the back of their teeth, on the top. Or you curl your tongue under behind your bottom teeth and you get a little gap underneath and it sounds like this. You add your scream to that and that sounds pretty cool. Now you've mastered your low scream and your main middle scream, which is Parkway Drive, In Heart's Wake, Whitechapel, they all use this. It's all the same shit. It's false chord. It's pretty cool and it's the easiest one to do, I reckon. We're going to move on to a high scream. Now it's basically the exact same technique. Unfortunately you can't get too high with this scream. It tends to sit around this middle range and I can't personally go that high with it. All you're going to do is basically just do your normal one and you're going to open your mouth like a spastic. The wider you get your mouth, the higher your scream's gonna go. And that's basically how you do this one. You can try and tense your false chord a little bit harder. It takes a little bit longer to understand what that feels like, but yeah, that's another way you can do it. Now the next thing, and this is once you got all of these, you can start playing around with adding your own voice in. And I call this expression. Mixing up your distortion and your normal voice. So you get this blend and you personalize your scream. I tend to have a lot of voice in mine, and that goes into more of a King 810 style sound. If you don't know who King 810 is, you should check them out. They're amazing. You kind of start pushing your normal scream and you add your voice to it, okay? So instead of just getting that crackly sound, you start pushing your voice through it. If you want to hate everybody! Sounds a little bit more personal. This is one of my favorite screams. You're gonna try and put like a real pushed voice. Yeah, I want to talk to you like this! Really loud! That's how you kind of start. Then you want to add your scream in. This is going to take a while to understand, and it can be quite painful if you do it too much. I'm going to talk like this and I'm going to put my rasp! You can sound like this if you want to hate everybody! So that's how I go about it. That one is a King 810 style scream. It's fucking awesome. I love it. Sounds really aggressive, but it's really easy to fall out of, and you can tend to fuck up the sound really quickly. Push like this! Like that. It's really funny to get it wrong. Sound like an idiot, but fuck it. It's good to learn. Now, I personally learned how to scream when I was drunk as hell in the back of a car. We're heading back from a party with my best friend and my girlfriend, and we just decided to start screaming along to Some Asking Alexandria, and he got it, and then I just kept trying it in the car and it worked one day. You could try it that way if you want. Didn't sound too great, and then I just jammed it over and over again. It hurt. Feel like I was rubbing sandpaper down my throat. That's up to you if you want to get to that point. I don't recommend it, but you know, we all make mistakes. Fuck it. I'm going to show you quickly, just before we finish, some of the layers that work really well. I tend to find that layering a mid with a low sounds really good. That sounds pretty ballsy. Sounds like this. The next thing you can try is a mid and a high. And just for shits and giggles, we're going to do all three. A high, mid, and a low. Some things to also remember. To warm up, sometimes I find having a good stretch is really good. Try and touch your toes, reach over to the sides, warm up your torso. Another thing is, don't worry too much about what you're drinking. The best thing to always drink is just straight water. I've tried milk, I've tried coffee, I've tried Coke, I've tried tea. The only things that really help, I find green tea and honey to be exact. Milk gets really gluggy, doesn't really help too much. Cold drinks constrict your voice a lot and it tends to get shitty really quickly. Coke, really sugary, really syrupy, gets stuck in there and doesn't really do much. You might get a bit of rasp for a little bit, so you can have a sip of Coke and then it kicks you off really great. After a while, it's gonna die in the ass. Be sure to stop when you start getting headaches. I had this a lot when I was learning. I just didn't breathe properly, no real control over what's happening in my throat, and I started to get a lot of headaches and it makes me feel like crap. Keep your lungs nice and full as you're doing it. Imagine like a 70% rule. You always have 70% of your air in your lungs ready to go, so that if you do want to belt out a nice big scream, you're not running out of air straight away. This is gonna come in handy when you start playing shows, getting on stage, jumping around, and finding your endurance is quite important. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments below if you want to hear any other tutorials on any other vocal techniques that I might be able to do. If you like this video, check out my other ones. You can check out my covers. You can check out some originals. You can check out my athlete page. Just check my shit out. See you guys next time. Happy screaming.